Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm standing between you and sunshine and you in a healing ceremony. But I think it's very appropriate for us to do some closing remarks to, and it's my great honor to be doing them, to sort of kind of put together and wrap up what this day represents and what we're trying to do with this project in conjunction with our partners here. I really would just again like to thank our partners in this, particularly Jo Boland McCall, who in her life honors her father with every single time that she presents his story. And as she grows into the next stage of her leadership to really restore the school in Lowndes County, to have Lowndes County not just be bloody Lowndes, but really the growth of Lowndes into reclaiming of its past in a positive kind of way, to take a building that was not the I was really very struck by, and I just want to sort of make the point about the work that Jimmy Breslin did in the Washington Post to document the story of the school that was torn down. The school that was torn down because he documented the case. That what he did really was put the shame to the community, and the community tried to bury it, right? The community tried to demolish the school and therefore demolish the memory. And really what we're all about is the opposite of that. And what your project is to restore the school is the opposite of that. And what this day is about and what the curricula are about. What is trying to happen at Cambridge Ridge and Latin, what's happening in New Jersey in your extraordinary work with your students on legislation. What we're really trying to do is basically create something from something that tried to be suppressed. To create something from nothing, to rebuild, reclaim, resurrect, and be the inheritors of the story with a different vision and a different energy, to do it from the grassroots up. Because every single person in this room who's been in this room for this day is like the people who walked across those bridges, are the people who are basically with their foot soldiers trying to recreate with our feet, with our energy, a different kind of energy, a different kind of future for this country. By claiming the past in a way that is healing rather than just the bloody history that it was. So what I'd like to do is actually make a couple of remarks in that theme, and really begin with an extraordinary quote from the great James Baldwin, who knew how to put things succinctly better than probably not anybody else, but certainly in his own way. He has this following line: "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." So that's really what I think we're all about here. We can change things if we face them. Nothing can be changed until and unless we face them. And really what the work that we're trying to do at the archive, what we're trying to do at the Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project, is document the facts that have to be faced so that then we can change. Because if you don't know the past, if you can't teach the past unless you face it, you cannot face it unless you know it. And really what we're facing are the cases that aren't known. And what we really are trying to do at the archive is we're not doing Emmett Till. We're not doing the Birmingham bombing. We're doing the cases that wouldn't otherwise be known. The cases that would be lost to history if we don't grab them and snatch them before, in fact, they fall into the grave and into the records that we can't even get in order to document them. So what we're really trying to do is make sure that there is a past to be known. You actually cannot change and understand and rewrite the arc of the history. You can't embellish the arc. You can't undergird the arc. You cannot change and understand the ups and downs of the arc and the real downs of the arc unless we have the facts that undergird it, because what we want to do is follow the facts. We're not trying to invent the facts. We're just trying to follow the facts. And we follow where the evidence leads, which is why, in fact, we're basing this at a law school, right? Because what lawyers and what journalists know and know how to do is document, right? Because you can allege anything, but a lawyer's got to prove it, right? You can say anything, but a lawyer's got to prove it, and prove it to a standard of either beyond a preponderance, or clear and convincing, or beyond a reasonable doubt. right? We have to prove it to someone's satisfaction, to a jury of fact finders. Because that's what juries are. They are fact finders. And what we need to do is document and marshal the evidence so that the facts can be found to the satisfaction of history. Because documents tell us our story. Now, we've had a really interesting example when the families so movingly spoke to us at lunch. And when they talked about the records. And we've had actually the yin and the yang, so to speak, of the documents. And I just want to make another analogy. When the question was asked about expunging the records, the arrest records of the people who marched across the bridge, and Professor Burns stood up and said, some people said, that's my badge of honor, don't erase it. And some people said, no, I need it expunged because it's blocking me in my life. And I also want it to be known that that was an arrest that should never have happened. And both things can be true, right? So when we had the surviving family members up here on the panel, we had two very interesting moments talking about death records, talking about death certificates, right? In one family, it was homicide, written right there on the death certificate. You had a confession, and there was nevertheless an acquittal. And on the other hand, you had the story of the McDuffie family, who said, the death certificate says, hematoma died of old age, right? A truth and a lie, and they're both true, right? So if you collected all the death records, they would tell a variety of complicated stories. They would be a story that was case by case, sometimes county by county, coroner by coroner, sometimes different over time, but you'd be able to have a public record, right, of the facts that would tell a nuanced story. And the story is nuanced. I really want to just salute Josephine Boulding, who basically talked about the fact that her father was a philanderer and said it out loud. And talked about the drunk. And people talked about drunkenness, and people talked about philandering in this room. Because that's also part of the story, because they're human stories. Right? This is not, we're not trying to whitewash, so to speak, the history. The history can speak for itself. Let's follow the facts, and the facts are the facts. But we've got to know the facts. And really that's what the project is about. And we want to go case by case, because each case has a story, a particular story, and a particular nuance. And really what we're doing by constructing a story is going in a certain sense, picture by picture by picture, which will create the story of the canvas. If we can go point by point by point and go deep into every story, that is the only way that we will know the depth and the breadth of violence during the Jim Crow period. It's only if we go case by case by case, then we will be able to have a history that retells the arc, that has a factual basis, that will give depth and breadth and scope to the work that we're doing. And we are in the business of basically trying to do that, but for the purpose of engaging our students, your students, Cambridge Ridge and Latin students, our students. Because one by one, and for every audience, every single time you see an audience like the panel we saw at lunch, you can't leave the case you touch without being moved and changed by it. Those CRLS students that we've watched for 4 years, up close and personal, that we have worked with, we have seen how it has changed those too few, only 20, 25, 30 students. But we've seen how it has changed and shaped their interactions with their own history by virtue of their work on these cases. You will remember what you heard at lunch. You will remember their courage and their stories and their pain. That's how we will change the world, is really by having empathy and engagement by students, by people investigating cases, and changing the history one piece at a time. Because really, actually, what engagement allows is the possibility of engaging history with some truth. So we can only engage the country if in fact the story grabs you and holds you in a way that actually allows you to be moved and change your ideas and change your image and humanize the story and have it be not a story of history that feels far away as if it were in the heavens, but down here on earth. It is a history that we can grab and we can hold if we know it. And so the only way actually that we can change the country is if we understand that arc with the lessons that it has to tell, and the lessons are many. We can understand from the stories we've heard about armed encounters on buses. We heard 3 stories about buses and armed motormen today, right? Well, what does that mean about arming our teachers? Right? What can we learn from our history that doesn't look exactly like we're learning a civil rights story, but we're learning a story about what history has to teach us? So if we want to see that Black Lives Matter, it's because our period will tell us that the reason they chose that word is because these lives didn't. Right? So there are lessons that seem a little bit oblique, and there are lessons that seem very direct, that we can learn from these individual cases and by putting them all together. As Baldwin said, everything that is faced, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Thank you, everybody, for working with us to face it today.
Convening in a few moments with Healing Waters workshop.
That's it, some of that.
I took my notes.